So this is just a short video to give you a few more tips about the setting of the PRSD targets for 2021-22. Remember, the process of PRSD involves normally a review statement process that typically happens in the June of the year. Obviously that didn't happen last year because of the suspension of PRSD, so we're coming in here to the objective setting for the next cycle. 3 SMART targets, 1 covering your professional practice, which may be something you do as a teaching strategy, pupil or curriculum development, which could be something related to pupil learning or the enhancement of some aspect of the delivery of your curriculum, and then your own professional development, the things that you might want to target this year for growth, or things that might help support the other 2 objectives. These 2 or 3 objectives are balancing 2 things: your individual context and the whole school focus. And in trying to strike a balance between those 2, I offered 3 different metaphors that could illustrate this. One would be the tributaries feeding together. Would be one that said basically we take all of the individual teachers in the school and we all do the same thing. That's not our way here in Lurgan College. Maybe this way is an alternative that we consider. This is a distributary, where basically we start at the same place and everybody goes away off and does their own thing. That's not a particularly useful or helpful way either. So our approach is to take this braided channel. To show you a photograph of a braided channel, it has definite outer banks and it has a direction of travel, and that's really the whole school focus. This is where we're going. We'll unpack that in a moment in terms of what our whole school focus is this year. But within that you have a whole bunch of rivulets that at times are widely separated, but at times they come together. And this for me really tries to encapsulate what I'm trying to do whenever I'm doing the staff development, of giving agency and giving a degree of freedom of choice in terms of what you do and how you implement it, because your classroom context and your subject context is unique to you and it is different from others. What will work in a science classroom may not necessarily work in the same way in an English classroom. It's important that there is a diversity of approach to this, but at the same time there are opportunities for us to come together, because in the coming together we can support each other, we can generate ideas together, and as we generate those ideas there's the opportunity for us to implement them. We lean into the direction of travel, so to speak, so that we're supporting each other. It might just be easier to paddle in that direction, albeit down your own little rivulet. So what is the whole school focus for 2021-22? We're picking up again on the teacher-pupil learning dialogue, and at this stage we're really focusing on this feedback loop. It's the link between the effective instruction, the message has been delivered, and the effective learning, but has that message been received? And to help you grasp that, I covered a little bit of schema theory, that we make sense of new knowledge by integrating it into our knowledge schemas. These are structured, well-connected bodies of knowledge. The example I offered there was the wardrobe, of how we have a structured, organised place to hang on the knowledge, i.e. the new clothes that we're hanging into it. This sense making, however, is affected by our prior knowledge. We do not make sense of new things in abstract. It can be affected both positively and negatively, but it is affected. So the illustration that I gave you of that was the 3 jerseys. They turned out to be football jerseys for those of you who knew that they were football jerseys. So your prior knowledge affected how you interpreted it. So if you identify the correct prior knowledge for the students, if you make those connections, that might be prior knowledge from your subject, or it might be prior knowledge from just some general awareness, some example that relates to it that you can pick and that they would be aware of. That can help them to positively engage with it. However, the prior knowledge connection, if that goes wrong, those connections can actually hinder pupil understanding, because if they make a misconception, a misunderstanding, then everything is interpreted through that misunderstanding. So it's important that we know that prior knowledge plays a large role, and it's important again that we lean into the positive aspects of that and try and mitigate the negative aspects of it. The next point was this: schema building can be unlocked or blocked by threshold concepts. The example that I've given many times now in this is, in chemistry, the salt of a metal. Unless and until I know what that means, the rest of my access, or my ability to access the rest of the learning, is blocked. Conversely, if we make these threshold concepts clear and explicit, the rest of the learning can be unlocked. So what we see there is that the schema building process is very important, but we see ways in which that can go wrong. And even when you design that as perfectly as you can, it still can go wrong. Misconceptions can catch you unawares. Somebody can make a connection that you don't even begin to anticipate. So just because you say it doesn't mean that they've heard it, never mind assimilated it correctly. The role then of diagnostic questioning, this feedback loop, is to help us as teachers to discern how effective that schema building process has been. Have they activated the correct prior knowledge? Do they grasp these threshold concepts? How do we know that they know? How do we find that out? Well, one of the ways we do that, of course, is through questioning. We got a chance to reflect on the sample that we choose for questioning. Do we sample as widely as we might at times? Tom Sherrington says this. I think this is a really helpful quote. Class is essentially a room full of highly individual, easily distracted, schema-forming brains grouped in front of us. It is vital that we get as much feedback from our students as we can in order to try and discern that. And the example that I used, or the metaphor I used, was as a dashboard. What information does a dashboard have? If you think about this in your classroom, what's your dashboard? Or for those of you that are into, say, military planes, a heads-up display. The thing that is sitting in front of you that gives you information about the landscape in front of you. Or the thing that, in the case of the classroom, this idea, this concept that we have of this dashboard that we're trying to hold in place as we discern how well pupils are picking up the information. Now, the dashboard includes a wide range of information here. How broad is your sample from your pupils? Are you finding out from a wide range of pupils in your class? And it's presented in a timely manner. Are you finding it out as you're delivering it, as you're teaching it? We're not talking about the kind of feedback that's done for a piece of written work that can maybe be handed back days or maybe weeks later at times. That kind of feedback is extremely important. Of course it is. This is a feedback though that's in the moment. Remember, the purpose of this is to see, are they connecting it to the right prior knowledge? Have they got these threshold concepts? Is there something that they're misunderstanding? So we got a chance to think about this photograph. If you stood in front of a group of students like this, what would you assume about the amount of learning that's going on? It's a usual scenario, repeated in classrooms everywhere. Teacher asks a question, a few hands shoot up, always the same hands. And the hands that aren't raised instead prop up drooping heads or twiddle pens. And those who raise their hands listen in class, engage with the topic, and so achieve more. The others often let their attention drift. Which brings us finally then to what methods we can use for diagnostic questioning. This is a sneak peek at the training that's coming in early October, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview for this because this might help you a little bit further. I'm keen to give you a series of really practical methods that you can be using within your classroom setting in order to help you to do that purpose of that diagnosing questions. So each one of these will be unpacked further in October. I'll not take time to do this now because I do want this video overall to be reasonably short, but if there are any specific questions that you would like to have about those and want me to unpack them, please do let me know. Okay, final piece of advice on writing something like this. Here's a sample objective. There's a strategy linked clearly to the school development plan. There's the whole school focus here, diagnostic questioning. Now, at this stage, it doesn't include any of the methods that I've just shown you there. So when we do the training in October, if you want to beef that out a little bit with some of the methods that catch your attention, things that you might be particularly useful in your context, by all means you can do that. Then we're looking at something time-bound here and related to specific class. We've got the topic, subject matter identified, and we've got the measurable outcome, the results from all of that. That's the objective setting, marrying the individual context and the whole school focus. And the last bit then of the PRSD structure is then the observation and evidence gathering. And the two lessons focusing on the observations, focusing on the objectives, and then a reviewer to record those. Again, I'm going to give you a little bit more tips and advice on that in the October session about how we might do that. So the what next is the updated PRSD structure I'll do as soon as we get all of the new appointments in place. I need to wait until that's the case, but what I did say to you was that if the person who normally reviews you has not changed their position in school since the last time, it'll probably be that person again. You're drawing up the objectives to be with Jill by Friday, and then the observation. Remember, we're saying that we really want to try and get at least one of these done. You can't do them all, of course, but at least one of these done by the end of term 1, just in case there's any further disruption. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more guidance and tips, and if you have any more questions, please do let me know. Thanks very much.